I got a question for you. Have you ever fallen off of a cold tire?
Yes, more than once actually. And you know, it's one of those things. It is so frustrating to you when it happens, and you know better, but it's just all of a sudden the grip is not there, and you know, you run into those issues.
It's a focus issue, but every one of our instructors, I think, pretty much have fallen off a cold tire. It was my last crash as well. So we wanted to put together this video on a couple of thoughts on getting tires warm in a way that will get us to the first 2-3 blocks of our ride, get us to the freeway with a fairly warmed up tire, get us out of the paddock onto the track with a fairly warmed up tire, and we'll get to tire warmers in a moment, but we're going to talk to street riders. And also, Chris, we run schools on DOT street tires without warmers, and we've got a couple of tricks, don't we?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of things you could do to make that better, to minimize your risk, but we'll run through those things as we get into this.
We picked a perfect day for this. We're freezing. It is cold out here. It's in the high 40s. I would say it's 48 degrees last time we checked, so 48-degree day. The wind is blowing. Coop shot the flags. It's chilly, yet we've done schools below freezing, right? We've started off on 30-degree morning and had to get things rolling, and we've got a couple tricks that we'll run through.
Yep. So we tried to put a couple controls into play here. So we took one bike, we rolled it out into the sun. It's been there for about 45 minutes sitting in the sun. We had one bike, all three of them started in the garage. We rolled them out. One is sitting in the shade, and then we threw a third bike on warmers. They're all on the same tires, same bike. We're gonna see how that affects temperature.
We're 40 minutes into our experiment. We're over to our bike parked in the shade. This bike rolled out of the garage, parked in the shade. It's in a garage, that type of thing. If you're at the track, it maybe if you're at lunch or at breakfast, especially at breakfast, and you've parked your bike in the shade, this is kind of what to expect. So 40 minutes ago, we're at 30 PSI front and rear. Where are we now?
Actually 30.1.
Okay, so we've gained 0.1 PSI on our digital gauge, and our temperatures were 42 rear and 41 front. So we'll just take this gun. We're trying to keep our distances the same. 42.4. It's gained 1.3 degrees in the front. It's probably similar in the rear. So this started at 41 degrees 40 minutes ago, and we've gained just over 1 degree since. So 42.6 is where this sits in the shade. Pretty cold?
Pretty cold, and there was actually a moment where we rolled it out of the garage. We actually lost temperature.
Yeah.
As soon as it, garage wasn't heated, as soon as the wind started to hit it, we lost 2 degrees. So it's finally starting to come back up. Maybe the wind's dying down a little bit, but there has been quite a few changes.
The pavement started at 35.6 degrees this morning in the shade. The wind came up just after daybreak, and it's dropped to 30.9 degrees of the pavement. So that's the shade. It's chilly, it's cold. This bike would take special attention when we leave here, which we'll do. We'll ride them in a moment. But this bike, I would really be aware of this. And Chris, this is Indy Motorsports Ranch. Our instructor bikes are parked in the shade. Do you think about it?
Yeah, definitely. If I see one that's parked up against the garage in the shade, I take extra time trying to get heat in the tire before I even roll on the track, just because, we've all made those mistakes before. So
shade's tough. Let's look at the sun. We're the bike we'd all fight to ride. Why?
Because it's sitting in the sun, it's going to have a little bit of temperature in it. Probably not going to be a lot, just given the ambient temperature and the wind, but it's going to be better than sitting in the shade.
The reason we talk so much about the wind, riders, is because the wind is coming along, blowing the heat off the pavement and off the tires. So you just have to be aware. I mean, it really picked up right there. You really have to be aware of the wind. The wind's a huge deal. It's definitely on our minds right now. So we'll shoot this tire now in the sun, and we'll just shoot, see where we are. 71.7. So you can see the difference, almost 30 degrees, right at 30 degrees between shade and sun. But now, Chris, let's look at the other side of the tire, because this is what really gets you in trouble. We look at this side of the tire, 44.6. So the difference between these two is over 25 degrees. So we really have to be aware of that. And Chris, you actually would park your bike in different ways. Maybe you'd roll it every 20 minutes. You might roll it forward at breakfast or during a track day to get the rest of the tire warmed up. And you would park it on certain sides as well. Why?
Yeah, wherever the sun's hitting, it's going to build a little bit more heat. Where it really comes into play is, we have it sitting on the kickstand here. We have it facing the sun. My first thought would be, as I get into the very first left-hander, the left side of that tire is just not going to have a lot of temp. So there's a lot of things you could do. It might change it a little bit here and there, but more concerning is when you see that it's 20-something degrees cooler on the other side. That should be the top of our brain, to just try to save that drama. So you might even think about which direction your bike is getting sun on it.
I like that. And on this cold day with this wind, it picked up 2 to 3 degrees every 10 minutes. So 3 degrees in the sun every 10 minutes. But what is really important to know is, and will you check the pressure, Chris, is that when you put your hand on this, you can feel the difference between this side and this side, but more importantly, you can feel this side is softer and stickier, and you can really tell. And you're like, that actually starts to feel like a tire as opposed to a piece of plastic rubber. And Chris, check pressures on this little fella.
We rolled it forward.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we actually have 31.1 on this front tire. So it's gained 1 PSI and 30 degrees of heat. So that's pretty interesting.
That is. So this is something I know we had a lot of students ask about, a lot of our viewers ask about, but Chris, we wondered too. We were like, does this just make us feel better mentally that our bike's in the sun? But we're seeing a little difference here, aren't we?
Yeah, it's good to put numbers to it, because I've never done this, and you know, you do feel the difference a little bit. You know, big thing is anytime a bike is sitting around, I don't know if someone's ridden it, not ridden it, I'll always try to put my hand on it, you know, and did this just come off track? Was it sitting in the sun? Was it sitting in the shade? But just a quick little pull your glove off, feel that tire out, and it lets you know if you're somewhere in the ballpark.
I like it. So just to be clear, in 40 minutes of sitting in the sun on a light, hazy day with the wind blowing at about 48 degrees here, a rear tire began this morning when we rolled it out at 42.8 at the rear, and after 40 minutes in the sun, it is 75.5. The front tire began at 41.1. After 40 minutes, it's at 71.2. So we gained roughly 30 plus degrees of the part of the tire in the sun. Chris, can you imagine a more perfect day for what we're about to do?
Yeah, this is the perfect environment for a cold tire crash.
Yes, yes.
The wind is blowing, the temps are probably only about 51, 52 degrees at this point. So it is a relatively cold day. Perfect opportunity to try some of these different techniques.
What's at the top of your brain as a rider right now?
Yeah, I'm thinking, you know, we're gonna go out, we're gonna test some of these things, but I don't want to fall down in the cold parking lot right now. So, you know, that's definitely gonna be the top of my brain. It's not gonna be a lot of lean angles, but we want to still be able to kind of run through this and make it as real life. Pulled the bike out of the garage. They're parked in the shade, so the temperature should be similar. And, you know, in maybe a minute and a half, how much temperature can we get into them?
I like that, Chris. And you're going to do 3 tests, basically. The first one, what are you going to do?
I'm just going to ride around as if I pulled the bike out of the garage and just start my ride. So I'm going to do 3 laps around this big old square. We'll come back in, check tire pressures, check tire temperature, see how much heat we can build with that. Next one, I'm going to start weaving. So I'll do the same distance, same speed, try to keep it as similar as possible. Check again, see how that affects it. And then on the third one, I'm going to do straight line accelerating and slowing. Again, try to set the speed, but just see how much heat we can build in about a minute and a half around this square.
That's pretty real, isn't it? If you're a track day and you don't have tire warmers and they give last call, and you go, as you cruise down the pits, you do a couple of these things, see how it works. We'll see what works best. And certainly, you go to breakfast and you come out of breakfast, your bike's in the shade, it's a cool morning, and you're going to be in corners in the next minute, and you've got to get these tires up to temperature. So let's go see what works. Are you in gear? Are you in gear?
I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
All right, front center is 75.7. Right is 57.3.
Rear temperature, pressure 31.2.
Left is 64.5. Rear center is 67.4. Left side 68.9. Right side 53.4.
Front pressure 31.4. So 1.2 and a 1.4 increase.
Really?
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
And then it's 20 degrees different side to side, but we did come up like, you know,
Yeah.
15 or 20 in the center.
Yeah.
Left side's still hotter.
Yeah. Interesting.
So
okay.
it is.
Okay.
There is something there.
Okay. So you're all set on this one.
All right. Now we're going to do the weave. All right. Front center 73.5.
31.4 rear tire.
Right 63.8. Left 93.3. Rear center 65.3.
31.4 front pressure.
Right 60.8. Left 79.7. Actually 80.2. So the left side actually got fucking smoking
Pretty good.
compared to the...
Yeah. Yeah. When we close, we got to make sure that we say, if you have two right-handers after breakfast, that left side's cold. You know,
Yeah.
that's really got to, because it's really amazing the difference between right
What
and
was
left.
the pressure rise?
A little bit more, 2/10 more.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Front center 83.1.
31.0 rear.
Front right 64. Front left 70.3. Rear center 96.6.
Front 31.2.
Rear left 72.3. Rear right 61.3.
Well, Chris, that was the third test. So should we go in where it's warm and take a look at the numbers?
Yeah, let's go take a look.
We learned a few things, didn't we?
Yeah, a couple things were actually pretty eye-opening, and we came into this with kind of some ideas and figured, you know what, we've never really checked it, and there's probably a lot to core temperature and using a tire probe or something like that that would change. But when we look at surface temperature and tire pressure, if we take a look at that left side, so it was a skid pad for, you know, I did 3 laps, so 12 left-hand turns. So on the very first one, not really accelerating, braking a whole lot, just kind of cruising around, but we did make a lot of kind of left-hand turns. So on our front, the rise in pressure was 15.6 degrees, and the rear was 20 degrees even, just rolling around. Test 2, where we were doing a lot more weaving, it was interesting to see how much that left side pressure really rose. It rose 44.4 degrees. Because when you think about, okay, well, there's just 12 corners, but 3 more weaves in between, we probably got on that left side of the tire probably 60 or 70 times over the 3 laps. So,
and you were making your weaves pretty slow, not slow speed, but you weren't just going bip, 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 bip. You were loading it, and that tire was working, wasn't it? That's pretty good pressure rise.
yeah, you get some good lateral load in there, so kind of a longer weave, trying to really get some lateral load on that. The rear rose 30.3 degrees, so again...
Our biggest left side rise.
Yes.
So you had left-hand corners around the skid pad plus the weaves, that really jumped.
Yep. And then the last one, which was my accelerate and stop. And again, we were kind of thinking as we're driving and slowing, probably wasn't really rolling through the lefts because I was trying to focus more on the stopping and going. So we actually only saw a rise of 21.4 in the front, 23.4 in the rear. So, you know, definitely more than just kind of rolling around, but wasn't as significant as, you know, there is something to having the bike on the side of the tire for building heat on the side of the tire.
Right,
So
as that left side worked, it gained heat. Right side worked in the weave, it gained heat. In this one, we gained it in the middle, as you'll see, not so much on the left side. Back to the center now, Chris. Things changed there, didn't it?
Yeah, so this is kind of the first test, just kind of rolling around. So we had a 25.9 rise in the front, 15.8 in the rear. So, you know, just even rolling off is still probably scrubbing a little bit more, putting more weight forward, maybe getting a little bit more heat in it as we get going. When we jump down to the weave, the center of the tire is actually a little bit cooler, right? It says we spent more time on the edge of the tire. So the front was 24.6, the rear was 13.8. So a couple degrees cooler, but the edges were warmer, right? So
right, and he never accelerated on the center of the tire. The whole time he was weaving, and then turning on the corners. So never used the center of the tire for acceleration.
Yeah.
And look at we had a slightly cooler tire. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, actually our lowest center of the tire temps were in the weave. So
in the weave,
yeah, wasn't really expecting that as much. That was kind of cool to see. And then the rear, the stop and go was obviously, we built the most heat, right? Straight line braking, straight line accelerating. We saw 34.2 rise in the front, 45.0 in the rear. So fairly significant, spending a lot of time straight up and down, but didn't keep the edge of the tire quite the same way.
I like that. So that was our biggest center tire rise. But again, this weave, it really worked the left side well, but it didn't do anything for the center.
So if we jump over to the right-hand side, again, when we thought it was all left-handers, right, we were just kind of rolling and riding, our least gains on the right-hand side because we never really touched it. We didn't build a lot of center or heat in the center of the tire either. So we only saw a rise of 18.4 in the front.
8.4. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, 8.4 in the front, 3.8 in the rear. So almost no temperature. So when we get out on the street rides,
yes,
if you're all right-handers leaving your neighborhood, think the first time you get on the left, there really has not been much surface temperature rise in it, which was pretty interesting to see.
This was crazy for me to see. And Chris, this explains, we're at Indy Motorsports Ranch in Arizona. We have 3 right-handers when we leave here. We go through 2, 3, 4, our first left-hander 5. What's significant about 5 here at Indy?
It's a slow corner, and it's where we have all the issues, especially first lap cold tire crashes, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I assumed when the tire was getting warm, the other side would get pretty significant, but it was interesting to see that on the gauge.
So heads up, riders, and I know this really stands up for us now. Heads up, when you have 3 or 4 corners in a row leaving your breakfast joint, and then you get into your first other side corner, it's really tough. It's a brand new cold tire. Center. Sorry, this is the weave for the right side.
Yep, so we saw a rise of 14.9 in the front, 11.2 in the rear. So pressures definitely came up more when you're getting onto that right-hand side. Temperatures definitely rise a lot more as you're getting the actual tire touching the right-hand side. But still relatively low gains, right? If you're not actually scrubbing that right side on the asphalt, it really isn't heating up. And then we'll look at the third one. We had a rise of 15.1 in the front, 11.7 in the rear. That was the stopping and accelerating. Again, really didn't get onto the right side of the tire at all, but I think because we built so much heat in the center from the stopping and going, that kind of bled out, and it actually ended up being our warmest on the right-hand side, even though we really didn't lean over to the right. So
yep. So this was flexing the carcass straight up and down, and it bled over to both sides, but to the right side it didn't get used at all. Even when Chris did the weave onto the right side, it didn't come up as much as we expected. That was kind of interesting. This is pretty good. Onto the PSI, we just jotted down starting from a 30 cold, and we checked them before we rolled out, got them 30 cold, let the tire cool down, which was very easy today because it was so cold and windy. And we got 1.4s, 1.2 in the back when we just rode around. This was just riding. This is just, you just left your breakfast and you're riding. As you started to put a weave into it, you built a little bit more in the rear. And then Chris, the big change was what we worry about the most is front grip, front pressure, front temperature basically. And when you did the stop and go, this was good here.
Yeah, we got kind of our biggest rise from the stop and going. Core temperature is probably getting a little bit warmer, and that's why you see maybe a slightly larger rise in PSI in that front. So, definitely I think there's something to that stop and go. It does, I think, based on what we saw, build a little bit more heat in the carcass and overall pressure in the tire. But, I think after kind of doing this, my thought for quickest way to warm a tire is maybe shift it a little bit, where it might be a combination of stopping and going with some of that weaving. We've always heard this from a lot of different areas, but it was shocking to see when you spent time on the edge of the tire how much surface temperature you actually were building.
So you're going to do your very best to not just get on your bike and ride, just roll out and ride and expect things to come to you.
Lowest numbers in pretty much across the board.
Pretty much, yeah. But if you can incorporate a weave into your ride, and it may certainly make sure there's no traffic around, you can get a weave going, do that long, slow load, get that going. Look behind you, make sure no one's there. If you're at a track day, dangle your foot while you do it. You can do this stuff in the paddock. Combine the weave with the stop and go and get that heat in different ways. And I learned a lot too. I wasn't weaving very much. I was definitely stopping and going. The problem with the weave is it's really frowned upon at track days, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it does get dangerous. People aren't expecting it. They might be going by you, and all of a sudden you're moving over. So, the weave would happen maybe through the paddock trying to get out there, but once you're on track, that becomes relatively dangerous. Same with the stopping and going. You'll see riders do it in the hot pits, but once you roll onto that racetrack, we're trying to be as predictable as possible.
I want to say that you need to make this a habit. I do not ride a street bike without doing the stop and go to warm my tires right away. If my wife's with me, she's stopping and going to warm the tires. Now we're going to add a little bit of a weave. When there's no traffic, add some weave, and because Chris, you never know when the emergency could happen. You never know when the dog jumps out or the deer or whatever else it is, when you truly need grip. So the quicker we can build this grip and get these core temperatures coming up, the better things are going to be. Not just on the racetrack, but street riding, which you do as well.
Yeah, and it's, that's really where it counts. So if you're just leaving your neighborhood not doing anything, maybe try to incorporate this into your riding and, just raise that safety margin by getting a little heat in those tires a little bit quicker. So let's pull it, check it,
okay.
Then we'll push it forward.
Okay.
All right. Center temperature on the front, 176.3. Right side, 172, 175.1. 180.1. So it depends where the wind pull that front. So we're going to try to keep seeing how quick they cool down in the sun. We're going to check them every 30 seconds. So coming back off the warmer, we'll probably just stick to the front tire. All right, so center 142.7, right 117, still climbing. 120.2, left side 139.8, left 111.2.
Yeah, and so this is fascinating, and this is something that we've had even instructors crash. You pop off the warmers and your tires are ready to go in the 170s, 160s, and then you get stuck, or you take your time getting out, or maybe your first lap is really slow and you've got a cold day like today. Last time we checked, it was 52 degrees with the wind coming off. slight haze on the sun, so the ground's quite cold. What is the ground right now in the sun?
Ground in the sun, this is saying it is 74.4.
So 74 degrees, ground's come up about 10 degrees overall since this morning. We didn't know that 50 degrees came out of it in the first 3.5 minutes.
Yeah, pretty wild with the wind going. What are we at, almost 5 minutes probably?
Yeah, let's take a look here. Yeah, almost 5 minutes.
All right, so we'll take kind of a final one, 5 minutes out. Center is down to 106.8. Right is down to 91.2. Left is down to 102.3.
I have to tell you, I'm shocked with the temperature loss.
Yeah, you can definitely see going to a track day, if you are running warmers, how quickly the temperature comes out of them. And we kind of get them to a temperature and we go, okay, well, they're good to go. But you may not realize that, if it took you, pull the warmers, you get your gear on, you hop on the bike, you ride down to the hot pits. Maybe they're waiting for the last couple riders to come in off track. Maybe 4, 5, 6 minutes, but you can see we lost significant amount of temperature. I think 50 degrees over about 4 or 5 minutes.
Yep.
So, that very first corner or two, these, especially if you're running a slick, they need a lot of heat in that carcass, a lot of temperature in them to really be, get the kind of grip and feel that you're looking for. So, as much as we were trying to work in the parking lot to get heat into a cold tire, it's just as important to try to maintain the heat that you do have.
Yeah, I've raced with tire warmers, and I still do, and I really had to train myself out of a slow warm-up lap. It really does change. So a couple thoughts, riders. When you pull that tire warmer, have one bare hand, or have your crew with one bare hand and touch that tire. Make sure your tire warmer worked. You didn't pop a fuse. That happens all the time. You crash the first corner because you expect it to be hot. Number 2, think about waiting for last call. Think about waiting until you see your group roll out, as opposed to going out on second call, sitting there, and third call gets delayed and you lose all that heat. So think about going out on last call. And third, CP, the first lap has to be, gotta go.
Yeah, you gotta try to keep that heat in there, and especially, last half of the lap maybe coming up, if you're in a racing situation and go to the grid, you are going all out, putting load in that tire, flexing that carcass, getting heat in it. And same thing from the start of the race. You take it easy for, first lap, you're losing temperature. It is shocking how quick it comes out of that tire. So definitely want to make sure first parts of getting out there, you're doing your best job to keep the heat in it.
Love it. We put this one together because our whole program is aimed at not ever crashing again, yet riding very quickly. Safety at the speed you choose. And we've had one of our senior guys hurt very badly with this exact thing, where he had no idea that slight delay on rolling his group out was losing temperature on the very first half lap. He crashed big, 4th gear crash, and really hurt himself, hurt his bike. And this is what drives all of our curriculum, isn't it, Chris? So now we know, boy, if we get delayed on that tire, on a hot tire, we had better treat it like a cold tire and start over again.
Yeah, fair to say. And we've seen it at the school. We'll do 2-up laps with people. And we'll stop on track, and we're talking with them, we're coaching, we're doing other drills while we're doing it. They'll hop on the back, you'll run, 2 minutes around there. And on a cool day like it was today, they hop back on their bike, tip it over in the first corner, because you just don't realize how much heat you lose in 2 or 3 minutes of it sitting there on a cool day in the wind. So, regardless of what your situation, if it's racing, street riding, whatever it might be, that letting the tire sit cool with cool temps and wind blowing on it, it really can catch up to you.